Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're diving into something I bet you're hearing a lot about as an IT professional. Platform engineering. Is it just DevOps just up with a new name, some tricky way to make you a software engineer?
No worries. We're gonna cut through the hype.
Sounds good.
We've got excerpts from Platform Engineering, a guide for technical, product, and people leaders, a 2024 book by Camille Fournier and Nowland. And what we really want to figure out is, what is platform engineering really?
Yeah.
Why does it matter for businesses that are trying to, scale up fast? And how does it compare to the IT roles that we already know?
And the authors, right off the bat, talk about leverage. And I find that really fascinating. That's like the core of platform engineering.
Okay, leverage. It sounds like a business school term. What is leverage in this context?
It's like, think of it this way. The work that a platform engineering team does actually reduces the amount of work that so many other engineers at a company have to do.
So they're laying this really strong foundation so everyone else can build on top of that without having to worry about all the nitty-gritty details below.
I see.
One of the analogies they use is the platform engineers are like the road builders. They're creating the smooth highways for the developers to zoom along.
So it's not just writing code, it's about building the systems and the tools that make the other engineers' lives easy.
Exactly.
Got it.
And they do that by creating these things called software-based abstractions.
Ooh.
So imagine like a tangled mess of infrastructure. You've got your servers and your databases, your networks, all that fun stuff.
Right.
Abstractions are like creating simplified interfaces on top of all of that. So it's like a control panel that hides the complexity and lets other engineers interact with it in a much simpler way.
Got it. So it's kind of like how we use our smartphones, without needing to understand all of the circuitry and the code underneath.
Exactly.
We just interact with a nice, friendly interface.
Exactly. And that is one of the key differences between platform engineering and just regular software engineering. So platform engineers, they write code, yes, but they're not building like apps that users interact with directly.
Right.
They're building the tools and the systems that empower other software engineers to do their jobs better.
So using maybe like a construction analogy, if software engineers are the architects, like designing the buildings, platform engineers are the ones creating the standardized building blocks and the tools that make construction much faster and more efficient.
I love that analogy. That's perfect.
Yeah.
Now, this is where things get kind of tricky.
Okay.
How is platform engineering different from DevOps?
Right.
There's some overlap for sure.
Yeah. That's what I'm struggling with. Like DevOps is about, breaking down the silos between the development team and the operations team and automating things and making releases go smoother. Isn't platform engineering kind of doing the same thing?
You're hitting on a key point. So DevOps is essential, but platform engineering takes that idea a step further. So think of it like DevOps is like getting everybody in a room, teaching them to collaborate. Platform engineering is about building those reusable components and systems that reduce the need to have that really intense collaboration on every single task.
So if DevOps is about optimizing the flow of work, platform engineering is about building the infrastructure that makes that flow smoother.
Yes, you got it. And this came about for a reason.
Okay.
If you look at the broader picture, the tech landscape in the past, 10 years or so, has gotten so complex.
Right.
The cloud, open source software, microservices, there's an explosion of choice, which is amazing, but it also creates this nightmare of complexity.
It's almost like too many options can be kind of paralyzing, right?
Yeah.
It's like trying to pick a restaurant when there's 200 restaurants on the list.
Yeah, it is. And just like picking a restaurant, picking the right technology, and then figuring out how to connect them can be this huge time suck. Developers were getting bogged down with what this book calls glue work. All those manual, tedious tasks of connecting and configuring all these different systems.
Yeah.
So that's where platform engineering comes in to save the day.
Oh, okay. So platform engineering is the hero that comes in, brings order to the chaos. I like it, but I'm still a little fuzzy on like why this became so important. Was there a specific moment when companies were like, you know what, we need platform engineering?
It wasn't so much like a single moment as just this gradual realization.
Okay.
As companies started scaling up their software development efforts, they're like, wait a minute, all this glue work is becoming a major bottleneck.
Yeah.
Teams were spending less time building cool new features and more time just wrestling with infrastructure and deployment pipelines. It was killing productivity and innovation.
It makes sense, right? It's like trying to build a skyscraper on a foundation of sand. You can only go so high before it all comes crashing down.
Precisely. And that's what platform engineering tries to address. By building that solid, reusable foundation, you can free up your developers to focus on what they do best, which is building amazing products.
Right.
It's about creating that leverage we talked about earlier, empowering teams to move faster and build better software.
Okay, now I'm really starting to see the appeal, right? It's not just about making developers happy. It's about giving them the tools that they need to actually be more productive and deliver more value to the business.
Exactly. And that leads to some pretty tangible benefits, both for the developers and for the business as a whole.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm all ears. Let's dive into those benefits. What exactly does platform engineering bring to the table?
Well, the first and most obvious one is reduced complexity. You know, remember that tangled mess of infrastructure we talked about?
Yeah.
Platform engineering hides all of that behind a clean, streamlined interface. So it lets developers focus on building those features without getting bogged down in server configurations and deployment scripts.
So it's like giving them a pre-built Lego set
Yeah.
instead of a box of random pieces and saying, here, figure it out.
Exactly. And that leads directly to the second benefit, which is increased efficiency.
Okay.
When you have reusable components and standardized workflows, everything just becomes more streamlined. Developers don't have to reinvent the wheel every time they start a new project.
Right.
It's like having a well-stocked toolbox with all the right tools for the job.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's like the difference between building a house from scratch versus using prefabricated components. You can build much faster and more efficiently when you don't have to start from zero every time.
Right. And all of this ultimately contributes to improved stability and reliability.
Okay.
When you have centralized expertise and a dedicated team owning the platform, you tend to have fewer outages and more consistent performance.
Right.
So think about it this way. Instead of having like dozens of developers each trying to manage their own little piece of the infrastructure puzzle,
Yeah.
you have a dedicated team who are experts in keeping things running smoothly.
Okay, now it's starting to sound like a no-brainer, right?
Yeah.
Faster development, more efficient use of resources, and more reliable systems. Who wouldn't want that?
Yeah.
But let's zoom in on these platform engineering teams themselves, right?
Sure.
What kind of skills and mindsets are we talking about here? Are we talking about like hardcore coders who just, live and breathe in infrastructure?
Well, it's definitely a mix of technical chops and a specific way of thinking. You need people who are comfortable working with infrastructure and they can write code to automate things, but it's not just about being a coding ninja. One of the most important things that the authors highlight is the need for customer empathy.
Wait. Customer empathy?
Yeah.
I thought we were talking about internal tools for developers. Like, what customers are we talking about here?
That's a great question, and it gets to the heart of what makes platform engineering kind of unique.
Okay.
Remember those software-based abstractions that we talked about earlier?
Yeah.
Well, somebody has to design and build those abstractions in a way that makes sense for the developers who are going to be using them. That means deeply understanding their needs, their workflows, their pain points.
I see.
In a sense, the platform team's customers are the other developers in the organization.
So it's not just about building cool tech. It's about building the right tech, the kind of tools that developers actually want to use, and that actually solve their problems.
You got it. Platform engineering teams need to be able to balance their technical expertise with a deep understanding of how their work impacts other teams and the overall development process.
So they need to be able to speak like tech and business, so to speak. They need to understand the big picture and how their work fits into that.
Precisely. And speaking of the big picture, the authors really drive home the point that platform engineering teams need to treat their platforms as products.
Hold on a second. Products. I thought we were talking about internal tools and infrastructure.
Yeah.
Isn't that taking things a little bit too far?
I know it sounds counterintuitive,
Yeah.
but hear me out.
Okay.
The idea is that platforms should have a clear vision, a strategy, a roadmap, even customer support, just like any external product you'd find in the market.
Wow.
Instead of just hacking things together, platform teams need to think about user experience, the value proposition, the long-term evolution of their platform.
Okay, I'm intrigued. So are we saying that platform engineers should be thinking like product managers?
In a way, yes. They need to understand what problem they're trying to solve, who their users are, and how to create solutions that actually meet those needs effectively.
Right.
They need to actively engage with their customers, those other developers, and iterate on their solutions based on feedback and usage patterns.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
It's about treating these internal tools with the same level of care and attention as you would a product that you are selling to external customers.
Exactly. And that includes things like documentation, tutorials, support channels. It's about creating a seamless and enjoyable experience for the developers who will be using the platform.
But wouldn't all of this add a lot of overhead and bureaucracy? Aren't we trying to streamline things here?
That's a valid concern, and that's why the authors emphasize that a key practice is to prioritize self-service.
Self-service, so we're not just shifting the burden of glue work from one team to another.
Absolutely not. Platforms should be designed to be as self-service as possible.
Okay.
This means clear documentation, easy-to-use APIs, intuitive interfaces, everything that empowers developers to do things themselves without constantly having to rely on the platform team for help.
So it's like building a platform that's so intuitive and well-documented that developers can basically just jump in and start using it without needing a lot of hand-holding.
Exactly. The goal is to create a platform that feels like a helpful assistant, not a gatekeeper.
That makes a lot of sense. It's about empowering developers, not controlling them.
Right. And finally, the book highlights the importance of migrations and sunsetting, which, might not be the most glamorous aspect of platform engineering.
Right.
But definitely critical.
What exactly do they mean by that? Is it like moving data centers or something?
It can involve physical infrastructure, but it's broader than that. Think about it. Technology is constantly evolving.
Yeah.
New tools and frameworks are emerging all the time.
Right.
The platform team has to manage that process of migrating applications to new platforms and retiring the old ones.
Oh, okay, I see.
It's like being the conductor of a very complex orchestra, making sure that all the instruments are playing in harmony and that the transitions are seamless.
I can imagine that could be quite a juggling act.
It definitely is. It requires careful planning, communication, and execution.
Yeah.
To minimize disruption for users, ensure data integrity, and just provide clear guidance and support throughout the process.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here, from like leverage and abstractions to treating platforms as products and prioritizing self-service. It's clear that platform engineering is much more than just like a rebranding of DevOps or a fancy name for sysadmins who write code.
You're absolutely right. It's a distinct discipline with its own set of challenges and best practices and potential pitfalls.
Okay.
And it's a discipline that's becoming increasingly critical as companies scale their software development efforts and grapple with the ever-increasing complexity of the tech landscape.
So for our listener, an IT professional who's trying to make sense of all this buzz, what's the key takeaway here? When does platform engineering actually make sense?
That's a great point, and it's something the book addresses directly. Platform engineering isn't a magic bullet.
Right.
It's a solution for specific kinds of scaling challenges.
So it's not just about the size of the company. It's about the complexity of their tech stack and the challenges they're facing.
Exactly. Think back to that glue work we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
If your development teams are spending a significant amount of time on operational tasks, or if you're constantly battling inconsistencies and complexity across your systems, those are pretty clear indicators that you might benefit from a platform approach.
It's like reaching a tipping point where the overhead of managing all that complexity starts to outweigh the benefits of having individual teams just operate independently.
Precisely. Platform engineering makes sense when you need to create a more unified and streamlined approach to software development.
Okay, I'm starting to get the picture. But even if a company decides to embrace platform engineering, it sounds like there's still a lot to consider in terms of how to actually build and manage these platforms effectively.
You're absolutely right. There are potential pitfalls, and the book offers some great advice on how to avoid them.
Well, sadly, that's all the time we have for today. But don't worry, we'll pick up this conversation in our next episode and dive deeper into those potential pitfalls and how to build successful platform engineering teams.
Looking forward to it. It's a fascinating topic. I'm sure our listeners will have a lot of questions.
Until then, happy engineering, everyone. Okay, so you've convinced me platform engineering seems like it's a pretty crucial discipline for companies trying to, scale up their development efforts. But
Right.
Let's get practical here. For, an IT professional listening to this, what's the next step?
Right.
Where do I even begin if I want to explore platform engineering in my own organization?
Yeah. The authors offer a really practical starting point, and that is start by identifying the biggest pain points in your current setup.
Okay.
Where are your teams getting bogged down by those operational tasks? Where is the complexity causing the most friction and slowing things down?
So it's like a doctor diagnosing a patient.
Yeah.
You have to figure out where it hurts before you can prescribe the right treatment.
Exactly. And once you've pinpointed those pain areas, then you can start thinking about how a platform-based approach might help. So maybe you need to streamline your CI/CD pipelines, or perhaps you need a better way to manage cloud resources. Whatever the problem is, chances are there's a platform solution that can address it.
Yeah, it's about being strategic, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And focusing on solving those real problems, not just jumping on the latest tech bandwagon for the sake of it.
Absolutely. And remember, platform engineering isn't about building like this monolithic one-size-fits-all solution. It's about creating a flexible and adaptable platform that can evolve with the needs of the business.
So it's not a set it and forget it kind of thing.
Not at all. Platform engineering is this ongoing process of iteration and improvement. You need to constantly be listening to your customers, those other developers in your organization, and adapting your platform to meet their changing needs.
Got it. So start by identifying those pain points.
Yeah.
And then think about how platform engineering can address those specific issues. But there's one thing I'm still kind of wondering about. You mentioned, potential pitfalls. What are some of the common traps that teams fall into when they're implementing platform engineering?
Well, one of the biggest pitfalls is trying to do too much too soon.
Oh, so, okay.
Remember, platform engineering is a journey, not a destination.
Right.
You don't have to build everything at once.
So start small, focus on solving a specific problem, and then gradually build out your platform capabilities over time.
Exactly. Trying to boil the ocean will only lead to frustration and just complexity. Another common mistake is building a platform that's too opinionated.
What does that mean, too opinionated?
It means trying to dictate every aspect of how developers should work.
Oh.
Remember, platform engineering is about empowering developers, not controlling them.
Right.
You want to give them the tools, the freedom to innovate, not lock them into a rigid set of processes.
So it's about finding that sweet spot between providing some guidance and structure while still allowing for flexibility and creativity.
You nailed it. And then finally, one of the biggest challenges, and I think this is true for any kind of technical initiative, is getting buy-in from all the stakeholders involved.
Ah, yes, the dreaded politics of tech.
Yeah, it's unavoidable, unfortunately. You need to get the developers on board, you need to get management support, and you need to make sure everyone understands the value that platform engineering brings to the table.
So it's not just a technical challenge, it's also a cultural and organizational challenge.
Exactly. Platform engineering requires this kind of shift in mindset, both for the platform team and for the rest of the organization. It's about moving away from silos and embracing a more collaborative and service-oriented approach to software development.
Well, that's a great note to end on. Platform engineering is a really powerful approach for scaling software development, but it's not without its challenges. It requires careful planning, a deep understanding of developer needs, and a commitment to constant iteration and improvement.
And I would just add one more thought for our listeners out there. Remember that quote we mentioned earlier? It may be hard for an egg to turn into a bird. It would be a jolly sight, harder for it to learn to fly while remaining an egg. Embrace the journey, focus on solving problems, and always keep the needs of your developers top of mind.
So to sum it all up, start small, focus on solving problems, and remember, it's all about building a platform that empowers your developers to move faster, build more reliable systems, and ultimately deliver more value to the business. Until next time, happy engineering.